Hey, welcome back again to my channel. Welcome back to After We Chat. My name remains Chikachi Chibukem Omonia. Okay, so quickly, we have been dealing on the characteristics of the true love, and we've been studying First Corinthians chapter 13 from verse 4 down, and we're at verse 5. So we'll just deal with one element in verse 5 before we move on to the next verse, and that is that love is not resentful. Love is not resentful. That also means that love keeps no record of wrongs done to it. People actually have this habit of piling up offenses. Someone does you wrong and you just keep it there in your heart. Someone else does another thing, you just keep it there in your heart. So it keeps growing, it keeps mounting, it keeps mounting, it keeps mounting. And then at the end of the day, you realize that, oh, you stopped talking to the person, you now hate the person, and all of that. That is not love. Because true love does not um, um, keeps no record of offenses, keeps no record of evil done to it. That means that true love forgives. Forgiveness is the hallmark of love because people will definitely offend you. That is the truth. So the best way to walk in love is to have a big reservoir of forgiveness. Like you learn how to forgive people in advance. So even when people do things to deliberately hurt you or something, you have already forgiven them ahead of time. And when you find an opportunity for you to revenge, remember the story of Saul and David. So Saul was after the life of David for no reason. He was just jealous of David, and he wanted to kill him. And he had attempted several times. He had thrown his spear at him and all of that. He couldn't get David. And guess what? One day, David was out in the field and came across Saul. Saul was tired and was sleeping. That was an opportunity for David to kill Saul. Even some of his men said, "Oh, God has given Saul into your hands. Ah, go ahead, kill him. This is a man that's been trying to kill you. Will you spare him?" But guess what? David said, "I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't be the one to take his life. Yes, I know he wants to take mine. Even if he's to get up now, he's going to kill me. I'm sure. But I wouldn't be the one to do him wrong." No wonder he was called a man after God's heart. Now, there's a story I'm going to read from. Remember our book, Love the Way to Victory, right? Okay, so I just want to buttress this point. So basically in Romans chapter 13, verse 10, Romans 13, verse 10 says that love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfilling of the law. So love does no wrong to a neighbor. Okay, so I'm going to read you an amazing story. Like the first time I read this story, I said, this is impossible, So, but then that was what happened. That is Kenneth Hagin's story. He said, over the years, my wife and I have had many opportunities in the ministry to exercise the God kind of love. So our love would grow and develop. So anytime anybody hurts you, don't see the hurt, see it as an opportunity to exercise love. Are you seeing it? So, you just like having a glass of water that has water filled to half of it, so it's not full, it's not empty either. So it all depends on your perspective. You can say that that glass of water is half full. You can also say it's half empty. So when somebody does you wrong, don't become don't become bitter and say, can you imagine how she spoke to me? Can you imagine? No, see it as an opportunity for you to express the God kind of love and perfect yourself in it. So now listen to this story. Say, for example, one time we went to preach for some folks and we had just enough money to buy gasoline to get to their church. We arrived at the church in time to preach that evening, and after the service, we were hungry because we had been traveling all day with very little to eat. We were staying with the pastor and his wife in the parsonage, so we thought surely they would give us something to eat when we came home after the service. But they didn't take us out to eat after church or give us anything to eat at their house. They just went to bed, so we went to bed hungry. The next morning, we got up hungry, but they had already gone. My wife said maybe they went out to get something to fix for breakfast. But they didn't come back. Later, she said they'll probably come back at lunch and take us out to eat. Well, they didn't come back for lunch either. We didn't have a cent in our pockets because we had used every bit of our money just to get to that town to preach. Finally, they came in about church time and got ready to go to church, but they never said anything about dinner or about feeding us. They didn't even ask us if we had, if we had had anything to eat or if we were hungry. It had been a day and a half since we had eaten anything and we were hungry. It's one thing when you are fasting and seeking God. Then you expect to deny the flesh. But we weren't fasting. We were just going hungry because there wasn't anything to eat. Then, after we finished the church service, the second night, we thought they would probably offer us something to eat, but they never said a word about it. They just went to bed. So we went to bed too. We got up the next morning and they had already left. We thought they would probably come back by noon and take us out to eat, or at least give us some food. But they didn't come home. And this is the second day. Wow. Finally went into the kitchen to see if we could find something to eat because by then we were really hungry. We found one shriveled hot dog, one egg, and one stale piece of bread. We fixed the toast, boiled the hot dog, cooked the egg, and we each had a half a piece of toast, a half a hot dog, a half an egg, and a glass of water apiece. I said to my wife, I know what I'm going to do. You see, your flesh and your mind can get stirred up when people do you wrong. That's why the Bible says you've got to keep them under subjection to your spirit. I said, I'm going to call the district superintendent and ask him, what kind of ministers do you have in this district anyway? We haven't had anything to eat for 2 days. You know, if you're not careful in a situation like that, your flesh will want to take over. I'm sure that most of us would have definitely called the district superintendent, but see what happened. So I went to the phone and started to call the district supervisor, but something on the inside constrained me. The love of Christ. Wow. It was the love of Christ constraining me. I came back and said to my wife, I can't do it. I didn't call the district supervisor. Bless their hearts. People who act like these pastors are not going to make it spiritually anyway, but I'm not going to contribute to their downfall. I'm not going to be the one to trip them up. You see, when people do you wrong, God is taking record of it. And in the fullness of time, He's going to judge them. But you don't have to contribute to it. You don't have to be the one to facilitate divine judgment. No, just allow them, forgive them, and let them go. Because the Bible even said that when you forgive people, you are piling hot coals on their head. Okay, let's go. He said, I don't care if they did do wrong, I've got to walk in love, whether they do or not, because the Bible says that love worketh no ill to his neighbor. Well, that couple finally came in before church on the third day and never said anything about dinner or even asked us if we were hungry. We went to church and afterwards they just brought us home and didn't offer to feed us anything. They hadn't even given us an offering so we could buy something to eat. By then, it felt like my stomach was rubbing my backbone. When you go without food for several days, your flesh gets to crying out. I said to my wife again, I'm going to call the district supervisor and ask him what kind of pastors he has in his district. If you go to paying attention to your head and your flesh, you get into trouble. So I went to the telephone to call him, but again, something on the inside of me wouldn't let me do it. The love of Christ constrained me. I said to my wife, no, I can't do it. I've got a mind to get in the car tonight when the service is over and just leave. But I couldn't do that either. In the first place, people in the congregation would ask the pastor, "Where is Brother Hagen?" Then they would wonder why I left, and it would look bad for the pastor. But by the next day, we were hungry. I started to call the district supervisor again, but I just couldn't do it. Instead, I said to my wife, "I can't do it. These dear ones, bless their darling hearts, are never going to make it in the ministry acting this way. But I don't want to contribute to their downfall. I will stay through Sunday. I'm going to do right, whether these pastors do or not." People who don't have any more character or concern for others than they are never going to make it anywhere, much less in the ministry. In fact, this couple never should have been in the ministry to begin with. But I'm not going to contribute to their downfall, because then it would hurt me spiritually. Sooner or later, this pastor is going to reap whatever he sowed, but I'm not going to help him reap it. Besides, love worketh no ill to his neighbor, to his neighbor. Love takes no account of a suffered wrong. Love, God's love, is long suffering, patient, and kind. Finally, one of the church deacons came to visit us, and he began questioning me. I saw that he knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to hurt the pastor by confiding in one of his own deacons. Love worketh no ill to his neighbor. So I did my best not to say anything that would hurt the pastor. The deacon finally said to my wife and me, "Come down to my house." He took us to the back of his house, where there was a deep freezer that was full of meat and fresh vegetables. He said to us, "Just take anything you want." We took the food home and fixed it ourselves. That pastor and his wife never did feed us or give us one thing to eat the entire time we were there. They took up an offering every night, but they never gave us any of it, so we couldn't buy something to eat. So we were sorely tempted to get out of love, but I couldn't gripe and complain about it. I've got to work in love. So you see, so even when he had the opportunity to tell somebody, "See what this man is doing to me that is not good," he still restrained himself. He said, "Okay, I've got to work in love if I'm going to stay healthy. I just like it so much better staying healthy." So my wife and I just put our faith in God. We knew that down the road, God would meet our needs. So we just went our way. What happened to those pastors? Sometime later, the district supervisor called me and asked, "Did you preach for those folks?" I told him that I had held a meeting for them at their church. He asked me, "Did you pick up anything in my spirit while you were there?" I didn't have to pick anything up in my spirit. I mean, if nothing else, going all these days without food, my stomach told me something was wrong. They said what true love is all about. So I'm gonna just have to stop here till I see you in the next video. So work on yourself, walk in love, till I see you in my next video. Bye and God bless you.